Hi there, and welcome to the Cotswold Explorer. I'm Robin Shuckburgh, and we're exploring the wonderful region of the Cotswolds in southwest England. We've decided to revisit the centre of the region and find some hidden gems, places that are not quite so famous, but still just as beautiful. And it's a freezing morning in January in 2025, and you find Ross and me without Widget and Gizmo. I've left them behind today because it's so cold. It's minus 4 or 5 degrees at the moment, and I know that if I had them sitting at my feet here shivering, you'd tell me off in no uncertain terms. So I've left them behind, curled up on their cushions by the wood fire. I'm sure they're happier there. They'll be back next week. We're in an extraordinary little hamlet called Lower Lemington. It's called Lower Lemington to distinguish it obviously from Upper Lemington, which nowadays is really only one house. But this little tiny place, which probably used to be slightly bigger than it is now, is absolutely typical of the most remote of the Cotswold villages. There's a church behind Ross, which we're going to tell you about in a minute or two. We're going to show you around. Come with me. Little more than a farmyard, a few cottages and a couple of quite grand homes gathered around the church, Little Lemington is the sort of place that gives you an initial impression that nothing much can possibly have ever happened here. It's been fascinating for me to discover that whilst this little place hasn't exactly influenced world affairs, it has certainly been buffeted by the upheavals of English history from early medieval times and probably earlier. The ancient parish of Lemington, just a smidgen northeast of Moreton-in-Marsh, includes the Moreton Airfield, where Lancaster bomber pilots were trained in the Second World War, and where now firefighters from all over the country are trained. It was bounded to the west by a short stretch of the Fosse Way, one of the premier Roman roads built in the 2nd century AD, and which runs all the way from Exeter to Lincoln. It goes up to the 4 Shire Stone, which marks the point where the 4 English counties of Warwickshire, Oxfordshire, Gloucestershire and Worcestershire once met. I say once because in 1931 the boundaries were altered, so the latter county, Worcestershire, no longer meets the others at the stone. This stone, unique in England, is thought to be the inspiration for Tolkien's 3 Farthings stone, a central point in the Shire where 3 farthings met. The neglected and battered stone pillar was restored in 2022 thanks to the efforts of James Hayman Joyce and his team, who set himself the project when he sort of retired. It's only a mile or so from here and quite splendid, worth a detour. In 715 AD, 2 Saxon lords, Dodo and Oddo, really those were their names, founded Tewkesbury Abbey. Dodo gave the abbey land, including Lemington, and Stanway, which we have of course visited before and will be again very shortly. And until the 16th century, Lemington was run from Stanway Church. That association broke when Thomas Cromwell arranged for Stanway to be leased to the Tracy family in February 1533. More of that story when we publish our new film about Stanway House next month. Lemington became a crown property at the Reformation and passed through many hands subsequently, until it was bought by Lord Redesdale in 1811, becoming part of the Batsford estate, which it remains to this day. The church, originally Norman and dedicated to St. Leonard, a French monastic saint, patron saint of prisoners, who died in 559 AD, was badly damaged during the 17th century Civil War. At the time, it was reported to have been demolished by cannon fire, but obviously that was an exaggeration, as a good deal of the original church still stands. There is, however, a mass grave in the churchyard, thought to be a Civil War battle grave. I haven't been able to find details of the battle itself, but it gives us a hint as to how widespread the damage was during this violent time. The obvious earthworks northeast of the church strongly suggest there were once several more houses in this settlement. It's clear that the village has experienced serious ups and downs. The church itself has a chancel and nave, a south porch, and a large belcut above the chancel arch. This arch, almost certainly Saxon, is only 6 feet high and 4 feet wide. There are a couple of very rough holes in the walls on each side, intended as primitive squints, those architectural tricks allowing people sitting in the sides of the aisles to catch at least a glimpse of what was occurring at the altar. There's a wonderful royal arms over the arch, put there in 1815 to commemorate Wellington's victory over Napoleon at Waterloo, and restored in 1985. Above the altar, beautifully crafted renditions of the Ten Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, and the Apostles' Creed were erected in the 18th century, when the lovely box pews were also installed. The stained glass is lovely, but Victorian or later. The tub font, sitting on the floor in the chancel for at least the last 70 years, is 12th century. These days, a much smaller 19th century octagonal font is used for local christenings. The pulpit is a kind of double-decker construction with a reading desk underneath. It's been altered over time, making it more easily accessible for the preacher. Clearly, the church has been much loved and looked after, despite considerable adversity, so it's a little odd to discover that a bequest in 1513 of money to build a tower was never used to do so. Perhaps it's lucky. It might have made a bigger target for the Civil War gunners. I hope you've enjoyed our little trip around Lower Lemington. It's a tiny, tiny place. But once you know the story of the battle fought here in the Civil War, it creates a really interesting and serious atmosphere. We've enjoyed being here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can find us on all the normal platforms. Visit our website, thecotswoldexplorer.co.uk, where you will of course find everything we've ever done. We will see you again very, very soon, somewhere else in the Cotswolds, now probably south of the A40, because I think this village brings to a close our efforts in the northern part of the Cotswolds.